So I'm going to be talking a little bit about Kung Fu. And I know what you guys are thinking. Is this guy going to do some sort of weird Kung Fu demonstration on stage? No, I am not. Somebody say, come on over there. I'm going to hurt myself. It's not going to... Actually, standing back there, Gerhard's like, how high can you kick? I'm like, no, I'm not doing that here. So, anybody here like Kung Fu movies? I love Kung Fu movies. I like Bruce Lee, Jackie Chan, all those types of movies. And I don't know what it is. Something about a guy just beating the crap out of a bunch of other guys and making some weird noises while he does it and using nunchucks. All that stuff is just really cool. I don't know why. And so I kind of wondered, what would it be like if Bruce Lee had to sell? Right? Can you imagine Bruce Lee knocking on your door one day and trying to sell you cosmetics or a vacuum cleaner, or him cold calling you on the phone, and if you don't buy from him, he just comes over there and like snaps your neck or something. So thinking about all those weird and strange things led me to come up with sort of a fun presentation on Bruce Lee and the art of selling. And I actually really like Bruce Lee, and not just because of his Kung Fu and the weird noises that he makes, and because he's just badass in every way, but I actually spent some time reading a little bit about Bruce Lee, and he actually has a very interesting philosophy on life and how he lives. And I think a lot of what he used to talk about when he was alive is very, very applicable to the selling space. And so I'm going to share a little bit of that with you today. And hopefully we'll learn a couple things together. We'll find out a little bit more about Bruce Lee. And I know the alcohol is waiting afterwards, so we'll get to that. So a little bit about me. I'm the principal and co-founder of a company called Chess Media Group. I wrote a book a little while ago called Twit-Faced. Working on a book for McGraw-Hill on enterprise collaboration. So that is using collaborative and social tools within the enterprise to connect employees together. I blog on all sorts of stuff at socialbusinessadvisor.com. And as you can tell from the picture, I love to travel to all sorts of weird places and hang out with camels. I also like to play chess and racquetball. Not that that has anything to do with anything, but what I like to do. And I can be connected directly on Twitter at Jacob M. Questions if you want to continue the conversation, etc. So I always like starting presentations with sort of what I believe, or kind of a point of view that I have, just to kind of put some foundation or groundwork for what I'm going to be discussing. So there are a couple things that I believe. The first is that most people say they listen, but they really don't. The second is that there is a lot of fighting within organizations, and as somebody that spends most of his time working with companies on the internal collaboration piece, I can say that there is definitely a lot of fighting within organizations. I believe that organizations need to shift more towards a model of collaboration, both with their customers and with their employees. And finally, I believe if you don't trust someone, why work with them or for that person? And throughout the presentation, I'm going to be sort of addressing these points. So Bruce Lee made a movie, I think it was in 1973, called Enter the Dragon. I don't know if anybody's seen that. Okay, a couple people nodding their heads, all guys, awesome. Awesome movie. I highly recommend you check it out if you haven't seen it. But in the movie, there's a bunch of these martial arts guys. They're all hanging out on a boat going to some Kung Fu tournament. And some guy's walking around thinking he's awesome, and he's going around just like trying to start fights with people, kicking them, punching them. And he walks up to Bruce Lee, and he puts his hand on his shoulder, and he's like, "Tell me, what's your Kung Fu style?" And Bruce Lee looks at him, and he goes, "My style? You can call it fighting without fighting." And the guy looks at him and says, "Show me what that looks like." And Bruce Lee looks at him and says, "We really don't have enough room on this boat. Why don't we go to that little island over there? We'll take this little life raft, this little lifeboat, and we'll go onto that island, and I'll show you what that Kung Fu style looks like on that island." And the guy says, "All right, fine, let's do it." So the guy gets into this little tiny boat, and before Bruce Lee gets in the boat with him, Bruce Lee just pushes the boat out, right? Didn't throw a single punch, won the fight. And that sort of concept of fighting without fighting is sort of what I believe is relevant for the selling space, selling without selling. And I'm kind of curious, how many of you guys remember what it was like to sell before the internet was around? Okay, remind me to talk to you guys so you can tell me what that was like, because I don't know what it's like to sell without the internet, right? My company, Chess Media Group, has been around for around 5 years, and everything that we've done has always been done with the internet through social and collaborative tools. And all these types of things that I'm sure I take for granted today that didn't exist when I'm sure many of you guys were selling. How many of you guys have selling and marketing budgets of some sort? See, I don't know what that's like either. Because Chess Media Group's actually a tiny company, right? A very tiny company. And it's not just me. I know that some of you guys are thinking, is it just him? No, it's not just me, but we are actually a very, very tiny company. And that means that I don't have a lot of resources to sell. I don't have a lot of resources to market. I can't buy lists. I can't print out flyers. I can't do anything that a lot of companies with budgets can do. Yet we've been able to work with some of the world's biggest companies, such as the US Department of State and Sprint and Siemens, and we've been able to win deals from some of our biggest competitors. How are we able to do that, right? Nothing to do with direct selling, nothing to do with selling to organizations the way traditional companies sell. And I'll talk a little bit about what that was. So you wouldn't go around, if you're a martial arts expert, if you're Bruce Lee, you're not going to go around the streets just walking around, hey, how's it going? Wah! Kicking people, knocking them down, chopping people in the head. And I firmly believe that if you're a good salesperson, you wouldn't just go around selling to people either. Right? You're not just going to go up to somebody, hey, how's it going, Bill? By the way, can I interest you in buying this? No. You're not going to kick someone in the head when you first meet them. You're not going to sell to somebody when you first meet them either. In fact, if Bruce Lee were a salesperson, I think he would reword that to this. Nowadays, you don't go around on the street selling people and hustling people, because if you do, that's it. I don't care how good you are. So you don't go around kicking people. I think you don't go around selling to people directly either. So I'm going to talk a little bit about 3 things today that I think selling professionals and just organizations in general can do to sell without selling to their customers. First one is listen, and I know we keep hearing about listening, right? Everyone always says listen, listen, listen. But I'm going to say it again, listening. The second thing I'm going to talk about is building weak ties, which is something that we don't typically hear about. And the third thing I'm going to talk about is giving things away. So about listening. Bruce Lee had this really awesome quote that said, "Seek to understand the root. It is futile to argue against, or to argue as to which single leaf, which design of branch, or which attractive flower you like. When you understand the root, you understand all its blossoming." And again, this kind of gives you some insight as to what kind of a person Bruce Lee was, but I also think this is very, very relevant to the selling space. And to me, what this means when I think about selling to a customer is trying to understand the customer, not trying to impose your order or your way of doing things, right? Not trying to force your process or your methodology upon the customer, but trying to actually understand what the customer wants, what they need, why they need it, and really trying to work with the customer and trying to understand them. And once you understand the customer, then you start to understand all sorts of other things, such as what they want, how they want to be sold to. Next, I believe that listening isn't necessarily an action. It's also a feeling that your customer should get, right? Customers should feel listened to. And I have the best empirical data for this, right? My girlfriend, who's actually sitting somewhere here, I won't point her out because she'll be embarrassed. But all the time, my girlfriend and I have conversations, and I do the act of listening, which is you sit there, you look at the person, and she'll talk, and then my eyes glaze over, and she says, "Are you listening to me?" And technically, I'm doing the act of listening, but if she doesn't feel like I'm listening to her, then guess what? I'm not listening to her. So listening isn't just an action, it's a behavior, it's a feeling that your customer should get, right? Not just an action of sitting there and being face-to-face and kind of acknowledging that the person is there. It's really trying to understand the customer, or your girlfriend, which hopefully I'm doing a better job at. So how do you know when you're listening? Actually, before I even talk about this, I'm kind of curious. How many of you think that you do a good job of listening to your customers? Honestly. 1? 5? 6? Okay. Well, I appreciate the honesty. How many of you think that when people try to sell to you, they do a good job of listening to you? All of you, huh? Yeah, not a single person. Okay, that's exactly my point, right? We all talk about the importance of listening. We all say how crucial listening is, yet nobody in this room feels that when people are trying to sell to any of you that you feel listened to. And a large percentage of you admit that you don't do a good job of listening to your customer. So that's why I think it's important to highlight listening, right? And I know we keep hearing it, and this is exactly why it's important to highlight it. So how do you know you're listening, or what does listening actually mean? Number one, you talk less, right? I learned this very quickly with my girlfriend. I learned to shut up and absorb the information without talking. Next, you connect with the customer, right? So you start to feel a little bit of empathy. You can put yourself in their shoes. You understand the customer and where they're coming from. And finally, the customer actually feels listened to, right? Because you can do whatever you want, but if the customer walks away feeling like, oh, that guy really didn't listen to me, then it doesn't matter what you didn't listen to the customer. So listening has actually evolved quite a bit over the past 5, even 10 years, right? Listening used to be about sitting across from somebody at a table, being in person with them, or they submit a feedback form, or maybe they send you an email, or it used to be done via newspapers or radio or television. But listening has evolved to all sorts of things now, right? To Twitter conversations, to blog posts, to reviews on Yelp, to things like Google Alerts, to comments on articles, right? You can listen to customers in all sorts of weird places. And there are all sorts of tools that you can use to listen to customers too, some of them which are here exhibiting. So I mentioned Inside View. This is Inside View, by the way, and I mentioned them because I use Inside View. No, they didn't pay me to put this slide up in case anybody's asking. But I actually use Inside View, and I think they're one of the great technology platforms out there that allow me to listen to customers or to prospects or to leads when I interact with them. And what's really cool about these types of tools is you get a lot of interesting information that you really just wouldn't have about somebody unless you're using something like this. So tools like Inside View let me get a lot of things. Let's say, for example, somebody comes to my website, they fill out a form, they say they want to chat. Or maybe they just give me a business card. Inside View tells me where that person exists on social networks. It gives me a bunch of information about the company. It tells me who their competitors are, relevant news. I could look up that person on various social networks to get more information about them. I pretty much get everything I need within my CRM system, which happens to be Salesforce, right? And it syncs together, right? And this is the new type of listening that I'm talking about, right? It's not just about sitting next to somebody. It's being proactive and getting the information about the customer before you necessarily take it to the next step. Another great listening tool, simple and free, TweetDeck, right? TweetDeck or Hootsuite or Twitter search or Google search. How many of you guys use TweetDeck or Hootsuite or one of those kind of Twitter clients? Okay, a lot of you, right? Very simple and very effective way to start listening to customers, right? Whether it's with hashtags or whether it's with anything. I actually found my Salesforce developer because he happened to be listening to conversations that I was having about Salesforce. Right? So again, new tool, same function, listening to our customers, trying to understand our customers, where they're coming from, what they need, who they're talking to, why they're having these conversations, what their pain points are. Next, I want to talk a little bit about building weak ties. And this is something that we hear a lot in the internal collaboration space. Right? Building weak ties is in connecting with our employees, and that's typically the context of which we hear building weak ties. But I think building weak ties is actually extremely crucial for sales professionals. And I know it might sound a little contradictory because we're always talking about building strong ties, right? We want to get strong ties with our customers, strong ties, building these strong relationships with the various people that we can. Strong ties are great, but weak ties can oftentimes be more valuable, right? Because what do weak ties allow you to do? Weak ties allow you to transcend that small group of strong ties that you have and get your information out to new groups that you might not be directly connected to. Typically what happens when you have a strong tie with somebody is you kind of overlap in terms of your circle or the people that you know or the interests that you have. And therefore your information ends up kind of staying within that group of strong ties. When you build weak ties, you build a bridge into another group, right? So weak ties are extremely, extremely powerful. And I'll talk a little bit about, after this, I'll give you a couple examples of some very simple ways to build weak ties. Right? So weak ties are information bridges. They're very effective at helping you distribute and share information. And they allow you to have the potential to form strong ties when you need to. Another great thing about weak ties, very easy to maintain. They require very little effort. Strong ties are very hard to maintain, right? You have to, birthday cards, emails, bar mitzvahs, you gotta keep up with these people. It's hard, right? It's hard to have a lot of strong ties and strong relationships with people. Finally, weak ties allow you to connect to other ties, right? Think of weak ties as just bridges, to going to other people, other types of information, other geographical areas. They just let you get in other areas that you couldn't get to without them. LinkedIn, for example, I think is one of the easiest and best ways to build weak ties, right? Because any connection that you get, whether it's on LinkedIn or on Facebook or any type of social network, is a weak tie. It's somebody that you can reach out to if you need to. It's a relationship that you don't need to actively maintain, and it's a connection that you have. I went to Dubai last year, and I'll tell you one of the favorite things that I like to do with LinkedIn. Anytime I travel to a new area, first thing I do is I go onto LinkedIn, and I see which one of my connections are located in that particular geographical area. I happened to do that when I went to Dubai, and I was able to meet and still connect with a senior level person there from Nestle that manages Dubai and Nestle. Right? That happened because of a weak tie. This wasn't somebody that I knew well. This wasn't somebody that I continuously had conversations with. It was a weak tie that I had a connection with. Right? And again, just doing that simple act of finding people in your geographical area when you go traveling to different places is easy, free. Try going into LinkedIn and type in VP of Marketing and see what you get. Right? This is a free search. Completely free search. Just went into LinkedIn, typed in VP of Marketing, and I got how many results there? First connections, 192 first connections, 50,168 second connections that are VPs of Marketing on LinkedIn. Right? That's huge. And again, weak ties. All weak ties. These aren't people that I have relationships with. I could. But for example, for the book that I'm writing for McGraw-Hill, one of the ways that I was able to get quotes and include people in the book through LinkedIn. I was able to get CIOs, CEOs from all sorts of various companies because I had weak ties with them, or I was able to build weak ties through something simple like LinkedIn. Weak ties are also phenomenal for employees within the enterprise, right? It allows sales professionals to build trust amongst each other. Because what happens when you build weak ties within the enterprise among sales professionals? You start to understand why certain people within your company do what they do, what they're working on, why they're working on it, right? So you start to build trust amongst your employees, especially among sales professionals, which is something that I know a lot of companies struggle with. You really start to understand how and why some of your employees start to solve problems. And you start to understand your employees as a person, right? As people, as individuals. Building weak ties through I think it was the gentleman from Hewlett-Packard mentioned they use Jive, right? That's an example of one type of platform that allows you to build weak ties with customers and with your employees internally. This is my blog. For me, this has been the most effective way I've ever been able to build weak ties. Our first big client came as a result of somebody that read my blog. A recent client that we just finished working with also came as a result of reading my blog, right? Why? Because they were reading the content and they said, you know what, we really like the thoughts and ideas that you're putting forth, and we believe the same things that you believe. And because we believe the same things that you believe, we think it would be a good idea to work together, right? Simple, simple way to build weak ties. I really like this quote from Bruce Lee, and I think it speaks volumes to what we're seeing in the sales industry and just kind of the world in general, right? Running water never grows stale, so you just have to keep on flowing. Right? The challenge is for sales professionals and for organizations and for executives at companies to keep adapting, keep evolving. Right? And a part of that is through the social media space. Next, I want to talk a little bit about giving things away. And I'm not just talking about giving anything away. I'm talking about giving things away of value. So you want to do it to provide value, and again, you want to do it to connect with people who believe what you believe. Simon Sinek actually wrote a book recently called Start With Why. You don't need to buy the book, but if you want to go to YouTube and just type in Simon Sinek and look at some of his talks on trust, I'm sure you'll find them very, very interesting. And one of the things Simon always talks about is that when you're able to connect with people who believe what you believe, you're able to build trust, right? And that's kind of the ultimate thing for sales professionals. How do we build trust with our customers, with our employees? How do we build trust? And the simplest way to build trust is by being able to connect with people that believe what you believe. So an example of giving things away. This is our company website. This is one of the things that we were giving away, a State of Enterprise 2.0 collaboration report. It's free, completely free, right? But it's something of value. It's something unique. It's something that people can't get elsewhere. And yes, it did take us a lot of time to put this together. Some other things we give away. We do a series of in-depth collaboration case studies on all sorts of companies. IBM, Children's Hospital, Intuit, Vistaprint, all for free, right? We spend the time to put these valuable resources together and then give them away. Why? A, none of our competitors are doing it. Actually, nobody that I can think of is doing it. We know a lot of people that put out these very little baby case studies, right? 1, 2, 3-page case studies. These are like 7 to 10-page case studies of in-depth information around what other companies are doing for collaboration. That's unique. That's valuable, right? So when it comes time for people to get resources on collaboration, where do they come? They come to us. What happens after they keep coming to us? We start to build a rapport with them. We start to build trust with them. They know that they can come to us for reliable information. They know that they can come to us if they need help for collaboration. So providing value. When you give something away, it does a couple things. And again, when you give something away of value and something that's relevant. First thing it does is it builds credibility, right? It builds credibility in the people that are receiving the information that you're giving away, especially if it's relevant. Next, it shows your expertise. If you can provide great white papers, case studies, valuable pieces of information that people can't get elsewhere, it shows your expertise, right? It shows people what you're good at and what you can do and what your capabilities are. Next, it helps you become more relevant, right? After we started putting out a couple of these case studies, people come to expect them. People start to expect, okay, it's next month, they're going to put out a new case study on collaboration. Let's all flock over there and get that case study. And next, it helps you generate a sense of reciprocal obligation, which is the source of all relationships. And actually, this idea, I talked to, do you guys know Charles Green, author of The Trusted Advisor? Some of you? Trusted Advisor? Okay, so first of all, if you're a sales professional, I highly recommend you get the book Trusted Advisor by Charles Green. It's the absolute must-have book on building trust. And so I told Charles that I was going to be speaking here, and that was actually a key point that he added in, which I missed, but it's actually a very great point, right? When you give things away and you provide things of value, you generate a sense of reciprocal obligation. He gave something to me, I owe them my time, I should connect with them, I should do something for them as well. This is the book that I was talking about that Simon Sinek wrote called Start With Why. And I really like this quote, and if you watch any of his TED Talks or any of his videos on YouTube, you'll see him mention this many, many times, right? When we're surrounded by people who believe what we believe, something remarkable happens. Trust emerges, right? That is how you build trust. Connect with people who believe what you believe. And again, this is a concept taken from Simon Sinek, and it sounds like a simple concept, right? And it sounds like it should be common sense, but we oftentimes forget. And so again, highly recommend check out his videos, and if you decide to get the book, grab the book. So emergent collaboration platforms are very, very good at allowing organizations to build trust. And when I talk about emergent collaboration platforms, I'm talking about tools that organizations can use to connect employees together, right? Because it's not just about building trust with customers, it's about building trust within organizations as well. Because when we have trust within organizations, we can do a more effective job at building trust with customers. So a lot of these platforms, such as Jive, such as SharePoint, such as Traction Software, Igloo Software, there are tons of them out there. A lot of these platforms allow you to discover your company in ways that you didn't know, right? Yammer is another popular one. I'm sure many of you have either heard of or are using Yammer. These tools also allow you to build communities of interest. And one of the things that I know organizations always say is, why should we deploy something like Jive and allow our employees to create like a racquetball community or a community of people that like sailing within our company? Well, because when people are able to connect, whether it's for passion or for interest or for whatever, when they're able to connect with each other, again, that's how they build trust, right? That's how they get to communicate with each other. So if you have employees that want to create a, we play chess every Tuesday after work, let them create that community. Let those employees get together, because that's how you build trust. That's how you get to know each other and build these ties. Finally, these tools allow you to share ideas or thoughts publicly. Those of you, I'm sure many of you are obviously familiar with Salesforce, perhaps using Chatter, right? Chatter, again, simple, great way to do this. Building trust, again, all of this helps you build trust within your enterprise. Finding and sharing information, also very, very effective. People can share information, you can collaborate on information, transfer knowledge from employee to employee, all these things you can do within these types of enterprise collaboration platforms. And finally, before I end, I really like this quote from Bruce Lee, which I think speaks volumes as well. Always be yourself, express yourself, have faith in yourself. Do not go out and look for a successful personality and duplicate it. Right? I think that's a pitfall that a lot of people fall into. Whether it's startups or sales professionals or big companies, they always see what other people are doing and they try to duplicate it. And I think that's a big problem. And not just a big problem, I think it's a mistake. I think you should always be yourself regardless of what you're doing. So tying everything all together, Bruce Lee brings it all back home. Bruce Lee said that the best fighting is not fighting. And so I think the best selling is not selling. The best type of persuasion is not persuasion. Right? Providing valuable content, providing valuable information, building weak ties with people. Twitter is a fantastic way to build weak ties with people. And finally, the best sale isn't the fight at all. It's the rediscovery that 1 + 1 is greater than 2, and that the best raw material for collaboration is the customer sitting in front of you. So thank you very much. These are some simple ways to get in touch with me. We have a newsletter where we talk about all sorts of things with customer and employee collaboration. There's the blog, Twitter, and if you'd like to email me, that's my email. And one final quote from Bruce Lee: "To hell with circumstances, I create opportunities." Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. How high can you kick?